Talking about the origin of communication, it reminds me of the cavemen from the Stone Age, also known as the greatest graffiti artists for their inscriptions, messages through drawings in literal words. Some ones like smoke signals above the towers to alert danger. However, with time, the methods and approaches of communication have also changed. Hello and welcome to Excel. I am Ananya Biswal, Generation Z's own influencer. Here I am to get you hooked to the working processes of human interactions in the world. This module talks about the basics of human communication, comprising of the components of human communication and finally the types of human communication. Hello? Suhana? This is not Suhana. Perhaps you've connected to the wrong phone. That's okay. It happens, yes. Bye. You see, unlike this phone call, having the right connection is one of the most essential factors of communication. Connection is one of the most essential form of the word communication. Communication roots back to the Latin origin communis, which is a noun, and communicare, which is a verb. Louis Allen, a communication theorist, once said, communication is a bridge of meaning and systematic process through understanding, telling, and listening. But let's not forget the two important characteristics of communication. Firstly, it is a continuous process, and secondly, it is a symbolic process. The symbols are used to represent things, processes, ideas, and even events to make the communication possible. Now, after understanding what is communication and its characteristics, let's move towards the components of communication. There are three components of communication: verbal communication, paraverbal communication, and non-verbal communication. Verbal communication is the use of sound and words to send a message from one person to the other. Hence, communicating verbally includes both oral and written communication. This suddenly reminds me of a film, To All the Boys I Have Loved Before, which perfectly portrays the character of Lara Jean using written communication in the form of letters to communicate with her lover. Here's a quick reflection spot for you. Traffic signals, flag symbol, peace symbol. See how prompt you are with the communication procedures and how you can decipher all these symbols accurately. Heading on to the next component, tell me how many times have you changed your tone and pitch to get an extra scoop of ice cream from your mom, or rather modulated your pitch to get things done from your younger sibling. Well, there comes the paraverbal communication, which tells you what kind of rhythm and pitch of voice is relevant in a particular situation. It is a kind of communication which includes sounds such as murmurs, gasps, vocal qualities such as volume, rhythm, pitch, and inflection. Drawing a clear line of difference, verbal communication is what you say or write, whereas paraverbal communication is the way you say it. Proceeding on to the next component of communication, which neither deals with spoken language nor written words: non-verbal communication. Did that remind you of the quick all the best wish with a thumbs up gesture to your friend who was seated for exam? Or rather, the immediate happiness on your face when your dad gets you a new phone? You got that right. Non-verbal communication talks about gestures, actions, which includes facial expressions and physical touch. I feel this kind of communication is much more promising because, actions speak louder than words. So here's another reflection challenge for you. Let's see how prompt you are with this. As you guessed again correctly for the second time, the mode used here is what we just learned right now. That is a mixture of paraverbal communication and non-verbal communication, focusing on the typical student examination behavior using murmurs and speaking in very soft voices, using signs and symbols to determine which question number it exactly is. Now it's time to lean towards one of the most important topics in the field, the types of communication. There are 5 types of communication: intrapersonal communication, interpersonal communication, small group communication, organizational communication, and lastly, mass communication. Let's get going. Well, right after your +2 exams, didn't you think to yourself whether it was chemical formulas or was it Shakespeare's verses you wanted to spend 3 years with? This is where you perceive your own behavior. Now think about all the times you have crushed over someone and all the hypothetical conversations you have with them in your mind. Exactly. In a layman's term, talking to yourself will constitute intrapersonal communication. The second type of communication is interpersonal communication. Guys, do you remember the tiffin breaks in between boring lectures? Can you picture yourself running towards your best friend with some interesting gossip? You have been a part of all this, which involves interaction between 2 or more people. Another kind of communication deals with a particular group of people that work together to achieve a common purpose. It is known as small group communication. Remember the tense discussions before every football match and the dinner table conversations among your family about politics? Organizational communication is another area in the communication field, which pertains to communication in an extended environment. Hierarchy here is the most important element. There is hierarchy in every relationship if you look a little closer. For instance, the hierarchical divisions are most common in organizations where you'll find the head as your boss. Then, other members of different departments report to him. According to this module, the last type of communication is mass communication, which means communicating to the mass in literal terms. This field is identified with a larger connect to an array of audience and with varied options. To engage in this area, various channels such as newspapers, audiovisuals, and broadcast can be used. To all the future media professionals and media aspirants out there, show up your lucky cards here. Is talking over the phone intrapersonal communication or is it interpersonal communication? Both? Yes. Indeed, it is interpersonal communication in both the cases. Even though the telephonic conversation is taking place over the phone, it is still a living and a two-person conversation, and the in-person talk fulfills all the criteria of an interpersonal communication. So that's in. Now that we have come to an end of this module, I'm going to take you around a quick recap with some keywords. Some of them are continuous, symbolic, face-to-face communication, gestures, hierarchy. There are 3 components of communication: verbal, sound, and words; paraverbal, murmurs, gasps, and vocal qualities; non-verbal, facial expression, physical touch. The types of communication. There are 5 types of communication: intrapersonal communication, interpersonal communication, small group communication, organizational communication, and lastly, mass communication. Now that we are about to reach the end of the module, and I would like to say communication is a vast area of study and it is perceived differently in different spaces. Forming the crux for any media student, it is a bridge to our emotions, thoughts, and ideas. Hello? Yes, this is Ananya. You can exceptionally use the studio tomorrow. Am I sure? Yes, I am sure. That is why I am communicating this to you. We have reeled it.